Hi, I'm Jack Canfield, co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series and the book, The Success Principles, How to Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. And I'm here today with Cheri, Torres, and Stavros, who are the authors of Conversations Worth Having, Using Appreciative Inquiry to Fuel Productive and Meaningful Conversations. And for the last 25 years, Cheri and Jackie have been internationally recognized for their work using appreciative inquiry to positively affect the lives of thousands of people and hundreds of organizations to improve their capacity to thrive in uncertain times. And we are definitely in uncertain times right now. And we're going to talk about what appreciative inquiry is. I've used that term twice now, and you may not know what it is. But also just to say, during this global pandemic and civil unrest that we're experiencing, they've been offering their simple practices, which you'll hear about today, in an ever-changing world, helping people cope with this. And I think the world's always ever-changing. We just don't see it so powerfully as we do now. But I want to welcome both of you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. And let's start. We've used this word appreciative inquiry, and I love what it is and what it means and what it does, but most people have never heard of it. So let's just unpack that for a minute. What is appreciative inquiry?
So if you think about, you hear the word AI, people think artificial intelligence. This AI is human intelligence, human potential. Think back to your earlier days, Jack. So appreciative inquiry is bringing out the best in people, in situations, in the relevant world, and it's been used all over the world for positive change and transformation in people who live in systems that are just full of people.
Mm-hmm. So inquiry means to inquire, to ask a question, and we're going to talk about how the power of that can change a conversation. But let's start about, you're on this mission. You want to make a difference in the world. You want to transform individuals, companies, corporations, families, the world in general. What got you started on this? How did you get into this?
Well, you said it nicely. Cheri and I have been working with organizations around the globe for 25 years now. And what we wanted to do was to bring appreciative inquiry through two simple practices to people, to everyday living. And the benefit of appreciative inquiry is it creates, your words create your worlds, and in your conversations, you're impacting yourself and others. And why not teach this to people to use in their families and their teams? Cheri, is there anything else you want to add to kind of what got us on this pathway of conversations worth having?
Sure. We have seen for years how this positively impacts organizations, leadership, and teams. And as Jackie said, how can we bring this to the everyday conversations? And we were very fortunate that our publisher, Barrett Kohler, has a very similar mission that we do to change the world so it works for everybody. And what our editor said is, we would love to have you write something that brings appreciative inquiry to the world, but it has to be simple. It has to be in everyday language, and you can have one, maybe two practices, because that's all people are going to really be able to change in a regular, ongoing way.
So your book is titled Conversations Worth Having. Why is that so important? And what does that really mean, conversations worth having?
So if you think about how often we're in conversations, it's roughly somewhere between 95% and 99% of the time that we're awake, and then when we're dreaming. And we're either in conversations with one another, or we're in conversations inside our own heads. And those words actually have a neurophysiological, biochemical impact on our capacity to be in relationship, our capacity to solve problems, to be healthy even. It affects our nervous system, our immune system, and yet we walk around not even aware that everything we're saying and doing, our thoughts and our external conversations, are having the most significant impact of anything on the world around us and what's possible. And you can imagine, if you think about that, if we changed our conversations right now to be able to solve some of the issues we are facing in the world.
So I'm going to represent my listeners here and our viewers. I still don't know what appreciative inquiry is. So give us unpack it a little for us. What makes this conversation different than a normal conversation?
So if I could just break appreciative inquiry down into the two words.
Sure.
To be appreciative or to appreciate is to add value or to bring attention to what is of value. And it is a conversation that is outcomes focused. And then inquiry is merely to ask questions. What we do in our book is about asking generative questions. And those are questions that help change the way you think. So you might learn more about another person's thoughts. You might understand them more deeply, or you might suddenly have insights into possibilities that you didn't have before. So it's conversations that add value the people or the situations, and really move the conversation forward by asking questions.
What would be an example of some of these generative questions? In other words, normally I think most people, when they get into a conversation, whether it's in business or home, if there's something critical, it's not working, there tends to be an attack and a defense and doesn't really move things forward. I know appreciative inquiry is different than that. What would be an example? Could you share that with our viewers?
So I'm thinking of one that I'm dealing with in my organization is how do we reopen the workplace and bring people back? There are people who are afraid. There are people comfortable working at home. And there's this tension of, why can't I stay at home? Why do I have to come back to work? And when you bring people together for a conversation, you're really listening to their fears, their concerns, as well as what would they like to talk about. So a question might start off with, tell me how you've been working well remotely and why, and how has that been helpful? And also asking a question of, how do we bring you back safely? And can we balance, how might we balance working remotely and working and coming back to the organization? And really asking questions that you're curious about to deepen the understanding of the person in the conversation, to generate new information and possibilities of how do we get people going back into the workplace, as well as how can people still work remotely?
So one of the things I took away from reading the book was the idea that we're looking at, well, what's already working. And so like you're in your example, working from home, or what's already working about our customer service. I want to talk about how do we improve it, what some of the problems are. But if I start there, then you feel attacked because I'm talking about what's not working and you're part of that. But if I start about, well, what is working? And then it allows you to start from a positive place. And then we can look at, well, where do we want to go and how can we go there together? I mean, it's really a different kind of conversation.
It is.
One worth having too. Really get this back.
And just if I could add a little piece there, it's not always about focusing on the positive, because sometimes a generative question may expand what appears to be a problem or an issue. For example, in a family, if a parent and a child get into an argument over something, if both of them keep pushing, it doesn't go anywhere. And if let's say the child gets more and more upset, if the parent pauses for a minute and just asks, what's going on for you? What's happening? It opens up the possibility for the child to be able to start to explain something that the parent may not even realize. And once the parent begins to understand, it changes the whole dynamic. So it changes the way the parent thinks, and then the child feels heard, and now they're in a conversation worth having.
I see. So again, the word inquiry coming from a question rather than just stating things or what you want or what's wrong, all that kind of thing. It's cool. What is the outcome you're hoping for when you do appreciative inquiry? What's the hope for result?
When I look at when you're dealing with people in organizational life and communities, you're looking for more productivity, performance, engagement, but their well-being. So this inquiry that you've focused on, when you inquire into what they are concerned about, what gives life, it impacts their well-being and impacts the health of the family, the health of the culture. So the benefit of when an environment works for all, you're impacting the health of the environment and the well-being of the people in the conversation.
Hmm. One of the things I'm finding helpful is when you give an example. So can you give another example of like a conversation that might have happened or you walked people through either in a corporate setting or a family setting or a relationship?
Sure. We've actually been running what we're calling Monday Kickstarters on for people who want to be able to bring an issue or a problem to a group and then have the group generate questions that will help shift the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can imagine, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, the conversations have been around what's happening in our country. And for example, one of the women that was on is a teacher in a middle school. And she was having to do end-of-year assessments for students and call every parent. And she was needing to do that, recognizing that many of the students never made it to the online classes. And then the protests broke out. And she was like, these parents and families aren't even going to be in this space of my being able to have this conversation. And so the kinds of generative questions that were suggested that she could have with parents was to first start off with, how are you doing? What's going on for you with what's happening in your community? How is your son or daughter doing? And then to gradually move it towards, we noticed that your son or daughter was not able to be on the online classrooms. Can you tell us more about why that might have happened? So instead of attacking the parent and making the child wrong, it's going in to look at what might have been going on. Like, we don't have internet service, or we don't have a computer in the home. And so it begins to create an opening for a conversation that allows everyone in the conversation to feel valued and invited to bring their own value.
Very cool. I remember when I was being trained many years ago to be a therapist, the advice he gave is be curious.
Yeah,
Coming from
absolutely.
a place of curiosity rather than a place of knowing, you thinking you know something. That's really a great stance to take. I think that's part of what you're doing as well.
Exactly.
Obviously, people are out there, and I want them to buy your book. I think your book is transformational, and I think every parent should have it. I think every manager should have it. I think anyone who's breathing should have it. It should be.
Thank you.
We grow up in schools that don't teach us the real skills we need for success in life, unfortunately. But what advice would you give to people for how to begin to move into this space of using appreciative inquiry in their life?
Piece of advice is, if you imagine that what you think and what you say and what you do does matter, and it makes a difference with conversations with yourself and worth having. And a spirit of curiosity that you brought up is really important in this inquiry, that I'm really curious. And our words create our world. So make sure they're words that are compassionate, that they're kind.
So if I could add to that, when we are having a conversation worth having, we're in a place where we are open. We have an open mind, open heart, open will. We're able to connect with people. And so my advice would be, when you're in a conversation, check in with yourself and find out, am I feeling really protective right now? If I'm protecting, I'm not going to be able to connect. And so how do I get curious about what's going on for me? And asking either myself questions or asking myself, what is it that I don't know? So that I can begin to shift out of protect and be able to connect with that other person before diving into a conversation.
Very good. Very good. Now, you guys have a large vision of what you want to see happening with this work in the world. Can you share that with us?
Sure. We actually believe that if we could change the conversations on the planet, and for people in families, in communities and organizations and around the world, if we begin talking about what we want to create and then have questions that facilitate really innovation, creativity, possibility, we could create a world where everyone flourishes. The only thing that's stopping us is our conversations. So we are out to create a movement. We have training programs that we offer for individuals and organizations, and we also have trainer certification programs because we know the two of us cannot do this alone. We need an army of conversational change agents, and so that's our goal. We're also taking this book and beginning to create focus books so that there'll be conversations worth having in healthcare and conversations worth having in the healing sector and in education and in families.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So if people want to find out more about your book, I'm going to hold it up so people can see it here. I love this book. I mean, I don't say that about every book. I love this book.
Thank you.
It's very valuable. Where do they go if they want to take one of your courses? They want to find out more about your work. They might want to hire you as a consultant to come in to work with their companies. They want to become a trainer because they see the value of this. Do you have a website? Where do they go?
Yeah, just have you go to our website. It's conversationsworthhaving.today. Go there today. Conversationsworthhaving.today. And everything's on our website that Cheri mentioned.
And you can order a free conversational toolkit. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a synopsis of the book, plus questions to work with your kids, your teachers.
Oh, good. Very good. Okay, so please go there. I really encourage you all to do that. Every once in a while, a solution comes along that you just go, this works, everybody should know it. And I think you guys have created one of those. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your commitment to the work and to making a difference in the world. And I wish you all the best of good fortune, as well as knowing that you're going to do the hard work to get it out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.